sales organization, you want 60% or better of your business coming from referrals.
And so now I'm learning that things are not so straightforward like that. That's coming with time, maturity, emotional intelligence.
I started getting into the environment of hunting at 7.
Oh, wow.
Because I started to shoot the bow, bow and arrow and learning that.
What I learned is that people don't like the scripted version of you.
Well, guess what? That building was 100% leased, fully spoken for prior to certificate of occupancy.
I think that people don't see that. They just think, like exactly how you said, like it's just like, oh, I just woke up here.
There's two sides to passion, right? There's a harmonious side and there's an obsessive side.
Sometimes you expect the punch because that leaves the person open. So, I knew where to take my hits. I knew when to duck.
He looked at me straight in my face and told me, listen, I'm good whether you make it or you don't. I'm good. You're not.
Welcome to another episode of the Bottom Line Podcast, where we say what we mean and we mean what we say, because at the core of everything that is, was, and forever will be, there will always be the bottom line. Today's guest. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Bottom Line Podcast, where we say what we mean and we mean what we say, because at the core of everything that is, was, and forever will be, there will always be the bottom line. Today's guest is a father, a husband, an entrepreneur, a new, I guess, resident of Michigan, right? Yeah. And a lender, a mortgage lender, loan advisor with Hamilton Home Loans, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, Hamilton Home Loans specializes in all kinds of loans for first-time home buyers, investors, and a lot of other mortgage products that are available right now that are going to be extremely helpful for people during this pandemic. And I wanted to take this time, to have this conversation with you, today's guest, Mr. Matt Wilson, right, of Hamilton Home Loans, because I think, what we need to hear we need to hear directly from people who are in the streets, in the trenches, who are having, real-time conversations with all these changes going on right now because of the restrictions and the pandemic and home prices, surging and being what it is. We need to get it from like somebody like you who's actually out there, right? So we know exactly what we're dealing with. So thanks for being a guest on the Bottom Line Podcast today. How's things going with you?
Doing well. How's everything going with you? Good morning.
Pretty good. Fired up. I'm on caffeine.
No caffeine for me here.
No caffeine.
Some water.
More power to you, man. Yeah. So how have things been going for you? How's the transition, first of all, from Florida, right, to Michigan? How's that been going for you?
I think I actually brought the heat up here.
Did you?
It was supposed to be a little cooler, but seems like it's a little bit hotter. It's just a different time of year right now, but ultimately the weather's still beautiful.
Yeah.
Not as humid as it is in Florida right now, and I'm just loving life.
Love it. Okay. And so I like you. I'm following you on Instagram, and I see you put up pictures of your father of 2, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so how's that going? The transition with the kids and the business and everything. How's that going? Is it like more? Because I think about life in Florida, right, versus life in Michigan, and I think of Florida, and I'm like always thinking about constantly being on vacation mode and maybe doing some work, right? Versus like being in Michigan where it's like constantly doing work and sometimes on vacation mode, right?
A lot of people said that to me. Oh, people, actually leave to go to Florida and they don't necessarily reside in Michigan. But for me, I felt like myself and my wife, we grew up in more northern states, so we wanted to raise our kids in a seasonal environment.
Right.
With more snow and leaves changing and picking apples and all that kind of jazz.
Sure.
Where Florida necessarily wasn't our cup of tea.
Right.
It's still a great state to live in, don't get me wrong. No tax, that's amazing. But,
sure.
It is what it is. This is what we chose for our family, and hopefully we can make it work all together.
Yeah, love that. It's interesting because the more people I talk to, especially during this pandemic, more people are migrating they're going to Florida, right? And you see even people on social media vacationing, you see the palm trees, and everybody wants you to know they're in Florida, right? But here's a guy who is actually exiting Florida and decided to go to Michigan. What was it about Michigan that stood out to you?
I'll be honest with you. To me, it was the people that kind of drew my attention. I was in South Florida for 22 years, and when I moved here, I I would say, you know, probably about half of the neighbors in the community kind of, you know, they kind of embraced me. They, you know, they brought over desserts, they cooked some dinners and different things like that.
Yeah.
Where I felt like in Florida, in my community at least, again, not all over the place, but in my community, I felt like I didn't know anybody. You know, I would drive by, I would wave, you know, look the other way, or they just wouldn't wave back. So over here, I feel like it's just more of a family environment where you get to know your neighbors. You're out in the streets, you're kind of together. So I like that camaraderie, that team effort type of thing.
Love it, love it. What was your feeling like when you're thinking about, you know, because it's a different market out there. I'm guessing it's probably it's a lot slower paced in Michigan versus Florida when it comes to your business, right? So yeah, talk to me about that a little bit. Like, how's that transition for you too?
It's definitely a slower paced environment, but you know what? Sometimes to be on the go all the time is not always great for yourself as well.
Right.
I get to spend a little bit more time with my family and actually get rhythm, whereas prior I was just always on the go, you know, 60, 70 hours a week, work, which is great. You know what? I made great money and I loved what I did. But, you know, unfortunately, it kind of takes a toll on you and you get a little burnt out. So you have to take a step back and see what is more important to you.
Yeah. Do you believe in a work-life balance? Like, does that exist in your world? Is that something that's like, or is that something that's like, you know, too far-fetched, like a myth for people to even try to pursue?
You know, I think ultimately you have to have goals. And ultimately, if you set out to achieve those goals and listen, you know what, if you can achieve them in a 40-hour work week,
right?
You know what, by all means, more power to you.
Sure.
But there does take some sort of, you know, you have to push. You know, you can't just continue to rest on your laurels and be like, okay, well, you know, I'm going to make it eventually. I'm going to make it. So, you know what, those 40 hours for me is really more like 50, 60.
Yeah.
You know what, and hopefully in 10 years, it can be 30 or 40. But right now, you know what, it's still continuing to push. You know, like you mentioned, I got 2 little ones.
Yeah.
You know, have to put through college, and my wife actually stays home with them at this particular point. So it's just a 1-income household.
Right. So on you.
It's a little bit more difficult.
Yeah. You know, so I think it's interesting, right? Because I tell people all the time, I say, listen, what you do is either an extension of who you are, right? For you to be able to find fulfillment in what you're doing, because it's an extension of who you are. And sometimes what people are doing is not an extension of who they are. So they feel like they have to always be putting it on, and kind of like there's a switch they got to turn on, and they don't find that fulfillment. They kind of feel lost. They kind of feel like they need to maybe get into another vehicle, right? Or another business, another profession. But for you, it sounds like you're more driven by being able to spend time with the family, and you want to be in a community where it's more family oriented. And that's probably more of who you are, right? What part of, like, just say being a father overall is like your favorite part?
Just to kind of see them grow, you know, ultimately, you know, when you're a father, the first time that they pop out, you know, you're in love. You're like, oh, wow, you know, that was crazy.
Right.
You know, that the human body can do such a thing. But, you know, the more that they mature and, you know, they start to walk, they start, you know, they crawl first, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, but then they walk, you know, and then they start talking, and then they don't shut up.
They don't stop, right? Yeah, I got 2 of my own, right? I got a boy. My boy is 9, and my daughter's 6. And my boy, you know, we started reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? Because Kiyosaki started, and he was about 9. So, and he's always asking me questions. Papa, why are you always working? Papa, come watch TV. Papa, come play. You know what I mean? So it's like, all right, let me put you on. Let me show you what I do, right? And so we start talking, and it's like, just to hear how far, you know, because this is the thing about kids. TV can program them, right? Their immediate environment can program them. But to hear them think independently and problem solve and connect the dots, that's the part that blows my mind the most. You know what I mean?
Sure. I mean, my son is 2.5, and you know, as soon as we run out of something, he goes, Daddy goes to the store and buys more. Daddy goes to the store. Like, you know, it's crazy. So, you know, you just have to kind of teach them that, listen, money doesn't grow on trees. And, you know, that's ultimately what we're trying to do with our 2 little ones.
That's funny, right? Because yesterday my daughter said, this is like a real life conversation. This actually did happen yesterday. Like, my daughter said, money does grow on trees, number 1. And she said that money is leaves. And then my son was like, and my daughter, they always go back and forth. They're like arguing with each other, like debating everything on the planet, right? So then my daughter goes, yeah, money is leaves, right? And then my son says, no, if money was leaves, it would have veins, because leaves have veins. money comes from the bark of the tree, because that's where the paper comes from. And I'm sitting there like, this is an amazing conversation. Why didn't I capture this, right? And put it on social, you know what I mean? But it's like those little intimate moments where you watch that, you're like, wow, you know what I mean? Like, wow, that's something that I wouldn't want to miss, right?
Oh, of course, and that's ultimately why I tried to make the transition. You know, I was in the restaurant business for 22 years, and you know, it's a great industry. You know, I believe honestly everybody should kind of be involved in it at some point in their lives, just to kind of get that customer service feel. You know, I feel like that's lacking in our generation today. You know, you call somebody up and, oh, you know, can you do this? Yeah, sure, I'll be out there, and then they don't end up showing up. Or you know, you call them again and they don't pick up the phone. You know, again, to me, being in that customer service business makes you understand, hey, listen, you know what, you have to be at the top of everybody's mind. You have to, you know, be there for those individuals. And that's why I feel like the transition from the restaurant to, you know, being a mortgage loan originator has done well for me, because ultimately I'm there for the customer. If somebody needs something, I know it needs to be done. You know what, just drop everything. This is important for right now, and this is what needs to be done.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. I don't think you could teach that. I think that's something that you either have or you don't have. You can try to learn it, right? But for it to be more inherent and for it to be more genuine, right? It's got to be something that I think you have to somehow in your childhood or something, you put people first, or somebody put you first, and you're able to like emulate that behavior growing up. I'm curious though. One, were you always like that, like people first, right? Or were you more like, was it like a situation that happened in life where you were like, oh, okay, I want to put people first?
You know, honestly, I think, you know, you said you can't be taught that, but then you kind of touched on it, that you have to be taught that from an early age. And ultimately, I think it can be taught. Okay. Know, but it does need to be instilled in you that, you know what, this is what needs to be done. So I can't tell you, was I like that 100% from birth? You know what, I know that I had positive influences in my life that, you know, kind of taught me those types of things. And we're like, hey, listen, you know what, this is what you should do. You know, when you walk into a room, you know what, say hello to each of these individuals. Yeah. When you walk out, you know what, you say goodbye. Yeah. You know, just a common respect that I feel, again, not everybody, but a lot of society lacks today. Sure. But they want it, unfortunately. Yeah, you're 100% right. I experience that all the time. I'm curious too to know, okay, because like for me, like, and you're a dad, you're a father, right? So you get it. It's like you have two kids, right? I think they're two boys, right? Is that right? Correct. Yeah, 2.5 and 7 months old. Okay. Oh wow. So the 7-month-old is still coming into his own. The 2.5 is like, you know, they talk it up, the whole 2.5 thing, or the 2 thing, the terrible twos. And then when I did my research around it, I found that the 2-year-old just starts to get an idea of what their abilities are, right? And so they want to exercise, you know, some of that independence, and sometimes the parent oversteps. You know what I mean? And takes away that independence from the kid. So the kid starts to rebel a little bit, the 2-year-old. Because like, I want to do it on my own, right? And it's kind of like, okay, once I read up on that, I avoided that whole situation with my kids. So we never went through the terrible twos, but their personalities are so different, right? So I'm wondering, when you're dealing with people, right? And especially because you're so relationship oriented, right? When you're dealing with people, do you think that you being able to deal with them on different levels comes from you being a father, or do you think that comes just from your level of experience in your profession? I think like it deals with just being in the customer service industry. You know, when again, this kind of speaks to the restaurant business, and again, I was in it for the majority of my life. Mm-hmm. But no two people are the same. You know, you can see that whether you have an employee or whether you have a customer. You know, you'll have that customer that they'll have a great experience sometimes, and they just won't say anything to somebody. But you also have sometimes that customer that's like, they had a bad experience, and they'll blast it out on social media, and they'll be like, this person did this, and this. Yeah. You know, instead of coming to the individual. So sometimes I feel like, listen, you know what? Each person needs to be treated their own separate ways, you know, and again, my 2 kids are not the same. You know, they're completely different, you know, and I can see that at, you know, 7 months and 2 years, you know. Sure. But ultimately, again, that's the reason why we decided for my wife to stay home, because I feel like it's important for them to get that education, not necessarily from somebody else, but from how we want to instill those values in our children. Yeah. You know? Yeah. I like that. I think those are like what they call soft skills. And it's like that is instilled at home primarily,
and then you bring that out into the world, right? And that'll help you like develop your strengths as a professional, as an individual, as a person, right? And hopefully you wind up in an industry or in a profession where those values that have been instilled in you is what guides you, right, to build those relationships, right? And that's what I'm hearing, more or less.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's important in any industry. I don't care what business that you're in. I feel like it's just important in any field, you know what, to obviously cultivate those relationships and show those individuals that you're out there and that you care for them, because there's a lot of people out there, like I said today, that they're just like, okay, well, I'm not here for you type of thing. And they show it just in their attitude towards you, or, you know, in how they respond to you as far as a phone call or just when they show up to your door.
Yeah, you know, they're super transactional, more they put themselves first, their own needs first, right? It's like, let me get the deal. I need the deal and you need this product. So, you know what I mean? In the restaurant industry, though, here's another thing that's interesting about what you said about the restaurant industry. So how long were you in the restaurant industry, first of all?
22 years. I started out when I was 14.
All right. So I used to my first job, I used to give out flyers for a pizza restaurant, right? And it was like, you know how it is, right? They make the pies, whatever. I was about 14, 15, right? And when they're making the pies, whatever, they slicing them up in like 8, right, slices. And it's like, turn them and burn them, get them in, get them out. It's super fast paced, right? So it takes time. It's like there's less time spent on getting to know each individual, their order, because it's just like a slice of pizza pretty much, you know what I mean? And the toppings is what's different. Somebody might come in and put a little bit, you know, they might ask for a little bit of some different toppings, but to just get them in, get them out, that was really pretty much the way that it worked, right? And it wasn't relationship centered at all. It was like turn them and burn them. You know what I mean? So when you go from the restaurant industry and you have I can kind of see where you taking the time to get to know people and putting people first, I can see how that can help your profession in the restaurant industry. But then what about speed? What about volume? What about churning them in and burning them? Like, right? Like, were you one of those guys who was like, you know, got to get them in, got to get them out? Or was it more like you knew everybody's name and you brought that skill set into the mortgage lending business?
I think that, you know, ultimately it's kind of a give and take. You know what, when you're busy, people understand that, you know what, you have a job to do. But when there is that downtime, you know what, you have time to talk to those individuals and kind of, you know, see where they're at in life. You know, again, people, I feel they want to know that you care about them, you know, and again, it's just, that's not necessarily, I was actually in the pizza business. It's funny that you brought that up. So, you know, yes, you are making pies quick and different things like that, but when you're at the cash register paying them out, it's kind of like being a bartender. You know, you're over there, you're talking to them. And again, I've tried to implement that in the mortgage lending space at this point. You know what, trying to figure out what their needs and wants are, how much they're looking to spend, you know, obviously not making them overspend. You want them to be comfortable in their house, and that way they have the opportunity to go to Florida on vacation if they live in Michigan, or vice versa. You know what? There's a lot of people in Florida that still, they do yearn to go out skiing in Colorado, you know, so there's different things that people like and dislike. You know what? It's just figuring those things out. What works best for those families. Yeah,
gotcha. No, I agree with you 100%, man. So, okay. Going from, I think, the restaurant industry, pizzas, right? People oriented, why not open up a chain of pizza restaurants? What attracted you to the lending industry, to the mortgage industry?
You know, I'll be honest with you, I actually thought about that. You know, I got out of the business during the pandemic, you know, but to me, again, it was more about the family oriented, you know, type of thing where I wasn't spending enough time with my children. I wasn't seeing them. So yes, my wife was home, which was phenomenal. And again, I'm thankful for that, you know what, the restaurant was able to provide that. But sometimes you want a little bit more. And I think everybody wants that, you know, so that's why I tried to transition. Believe me, it's not easy. You know, there is some days where you get up and you're like, wow, you know what, should I go back to that? But that hunger inside you have to have that. And you have to, you know, it has to burn inside you. Say, listen, you know what? My kids come first. My family comes first, and I'm going to make this work. You know what? And again, just different ideas. Listen, this morning I went to a networking event. I was up at 5 a.m. So it's just putting that time and effort into your business and making it grow. That way, hopefully, in the long run, you know, it rewards you.
Yeah, definitely. I think I made that realization maybe after my daughter was born, right? That because I was always like, time is money, but it's not true. Time is definitely not money. You know what I mean? Like, I don't believe that. I think time, if you have enough time, you can get money. You can probably earn some money, but it's not the same. Because I've run out of money before I've ever run out of time. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, I don't even know like who started that or why that's a thing, but it's still a thing, right? And I think when my daughter was born, I was realizing, okay, so like my son, things weren't, you were just starting out. It was like brand new and whatever, it's like your first kid. So you're going to figure it out how to make time for this kid, right? But then the second one, it's like, oh crap, it's like $250,000 a year to raise a kid, right? To provide for a kid. So like my ex-wife, like your wife now, was a stay-at-home mom, right? So it's like, I was always out, always hustling, always door knocking. I worked a full-time job. Then I go out and do my real estate on the side. You're talking about like 6-7 years ago, right? And I was realizing I couldn't spend time with my daughter. So that's when I started to realize that time is not money, because I'm spending all my time chasing money. You know what I mean? And it was kind of like crazy because after I went through the divorce, that's when I realized, yo, this is not healthy. That's not good. Like, like it's not good for you. It's not good for the kids. Right. And it's like I had to go through a divorce to realize that. So I hear what you're saying 100%. I'm wondering, okay, so like you were able to recapture your time, and it seems like time was more important for you so you can be a part of your children's lives, your wife's life, and have a life outside of the business. Right. What about risk? Assessing the risk that comes with that, the learning curve to get into a new business, getting into a new market, right? How much of that was intimidating to you and how much of that was exciting to you?
It was honestly very challenging for me at first. I said to myself, listen, you know what? My wife stays home and she's like, she relies upon one salary. So you know what can we do in order to make this work? So ultimately we kind of liquidated all of our assets, and I said, listen, you know what? We're going to sell our home. We're going to sell it. We had a piece of property in North Carolina that we sold. I had some investments that I had, that I'm still in at this particular point.
Yep.
But I said, listen, you know what? We're going to take that money and we're going to try to make it work. We're going to give ourselves 2 years.
Okay.
And listen, if we can make it work, great. If we can't, then you know what? We'll transition just like we transition now, and we'll find something else that, maybe I have to go back to the restaurant. But again, I feel like ultimately, given that 2 years, I'm going to put forth, that effort and try and make that money back, if not tenfold that, know, and ultimately that's where you have to be. You have to have that plan and you have to put it into action.
Yeah, I like that. So which part of it was intimidating to you? Like, was it any intimidation at all? Or is it like you and your wife were just excited about the whole idea?
I mean, the intimidating factor is you go from waking up every morning knowing, hey, listen, I'm going to go into the restaurant, and you're kind of like on autopilot, let's say.
Yeah.
You're doing it for 20 plus years. It's like you talking to an individual. Hey, listen, you know what? I know what I have to say. It'll come to me, type of thing.
Yeah.
Where, okay, you know what? I'm putting together a pizza. I know the sauce and cheese has to go on, and
right.
I could be sleeping and still be doing it,
Yeah.
So, the intimidating factor is just getting into something new to you, and you're like, wow, this is completely different.
Yeah.
Like, at the end of the day, you're absorbing so much energy because you're like, this is new, and your brain is working extra hard, where 20 years, your brain is just like kind of on autopilot.
Right.
That was definitely the intimidating part, but I'll be honest with you, I feel like having a great team, behind you and motivating you is key in that. Because you know what, if you don't have that, if you don't have those individuals motivating you, then ultimately you're set up to fail at that point,
Yeah, definitely. So you had a strong support system outside of your wife. You had a good team that was in place to support you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. That's helpful. Okay, so let's think about it, right? You transition into the lending industry, and you're in a beautiful place in South Florida, and I'm guessing you were pretty busy, you were pretty well known out there. Is that right? Is that fair? Right?
Yeah, I mean, again, I cultivated a lot of relationships in the restaurant, and I actually transitioned them into the lending space. I knew a lot of realtors, I knew a lot of individuals, and I reached out to them, and you know what, they were willing to work with me, so I'm very grateful to them.
Gotcha. Were those leads okay? Was that like those relationships? Were they like all warm relationships? Were they cold relationships that you built over time?
Obviously, you know, when you first meet somebody, they're always going to be cold. But you know what? Again, I had cultivated those relationships in the restaurant and then transitioned them outside of them, you know. And to your point, I wasn't just churning and burning those pizzas. So you know what? Those people understood, hey, listen, this person is taking the time and effort, you know, when they're busy, when they could have some downtime in order to talk to me. But I figure that they knew what they were getting in me, and that's why they were, you know, more willing to work with me than just some outsider that would have been cold just calling them.
Got it. Okay, so you're starting over out in Michigan, right? What would you say would be if as you're starting all over, and if somebody would just, if I approached you, right, and I had on one hand I have a book of warm leads, right, and on the other hand I have $1 million, and I say to you, hey Matt, I know you're new out here in Michigan, and I want you to get your feet wet. I want you to get settled out here, you know. Which one would you take, right? Just to get you, would you get started, for you to get started? Would you take the warm leads, or would you take the $1 million?
I'd love to take the money and put it in my kids' college fund. But,
right.
You know what? Like I said, I mean, I'm all about building the relationships and helping individuals, you know?
Yeah.
So I've had individuals help me through my whole life. So you know what? I want to help people, you know, achieve that American dream and get them started off on the right foot. You know what? Those warm leads could turn into hot leads, and then you know what? I could turn into 100 more leads after that. So you know, you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
$1 million, you don't know is it pre-taxed?
Yeah, good question. That's a good question. Yeah. Okay.
You know, in Michigan, we pay a lot of tax out here, so you know,
like
that million doesn't go as far as, you know, those warm leads potentially.
Got it. That's social currency right there, right? It's like, you know, you give a nice hashtag to it, and you say hashtag social currency, and it sounds good, and people will put it all over their social media platforms, social currency. But if you give them $1 million, they want that $1 million, and they're not asking if it's pre-taxed, right? Because they're the guys who their backs are to the wall, and they got to make this money, and they don't know how they're going to figure this thing out, because they can't. It's not they can't. They don't know how to build and cultivate those relationships. So I like that you asked that. Is it pre-taxed? And I will definitely take those warm leads, because that essentially will probably come out to more than $1 million, right?
Of course.
Yeah, I love that, man. Okay, so let's think about the exciting part, right? Because it's performance based, right? It's like pretty much you eat what you kill, right? So what part of what you do is exciting to you?
The exciting part, again, is just continuously helping individuals, you know what? And it kind of goes back to the family, you know what?
Yeah.
If I can show my kids, you know what, that I'm helping people, it's going to show them in the future, you know what, to help other individuals. You know, so that's exciting for me, you know. And again, when I first bought my house, you know, originally I was first-time home buyer like everybody else, you know, newly married, and I was like, oh wow, you know, where am I going to get this down payment? Where am I going to do this and that? You know what? You know, and I had somebody to kind of lean on. So again, I want to be that individual that people can lean on, and people can be like, hey, listen, you know what? Ask me different types of questions, and hey, listen, what am I going to do with this extra money? You know, or what am I going to do if I don't have enough money, type of thing. And you know what? You know, somebody once told me a long time ago, I was asking them how much money I should put into my IRA. And he told me, he goes, max it out. And I said, but I don't have the money to max it out.
Right.
He goes, you'll find the money. But if you don't max it out, you will never find the money.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. That goes right back to my time versus money, you know, philosophy, right? If you need it, you'll find it. You'll find a way. And I think you mentioned that like a little bit when you said your son says, well, dad goes to the office. He calls you dad, right? And he says, dad goes to the store and buys more. It's like he already has that abundant mindset instilled. He can already see that, right? That there isn't any lack. So it's like, if you want it, you'll find it.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you wind up maxing out that IRA though?
Of course.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you know what? I found it. You know what? You find the money. You know what? You work an extra couple of hours. You know what? You're picking up an extra shift.
Yeah.
Listen, if you had to work 2 jobs, you work 2 jobs. But
figure it out.
You figure it out, like you said.
Yeah, I love that. So you literally like walking the talk, right? Like it's not just talk with you, right? It's hard to come across that, man. It really is, because it's like, you know, we're living in trying times right now with this pandemic.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. You know, unfortunately, there's people that are losing jobs, people that are losing lives. You know, it's a scary situation out there. But you know what? I believe, you know, I watch a lot of TV or, you know, YouTube channels and different things like that. you know, and there's this one show that kind of stands out to me, and it was this guy, he was rich, and he actually was still trying to see if the American dream was alive. I forget the name of the movie or the show, but they actually dropped him off, and he was like all ragged, and you know, they couldn't actually put a name to his face. And you know what? He had, I think it was 6 months to create $1 million business. You know what? And he created the business. You know what? He ended up, you know, looking at ads, and he ended up selling tires to make a couple of $100, and then he made, you know, something else. And, you know, he just kept making money and making money. And then ultimately he actually opened up a restaurant, and he wanted to expand it. But, you know, listen, if you want to make a buck, you can make a buck out there. I don't think the American dream is dead.
Nice. I love that you said that. You're talking about, what is that? Is that Undercover Billionaire?
I think that's actually the show, correct? Yep.
Yeah, it is, right? I saw a couple of previews. I meant to get into it. I haven't gotten into it, but the guy that you're talking about, he is unknown, right? And like a lot of people don't know him. And that's the thing too. I think people get a little confused. Everybody wants to be known on social media. And then once you're known, you don't want that pressure. Like you don't want to be known anymore, because you always have to continue to. And that's another thing. I was having a conversation about that with someone yesterday. I said, how many times have you actually come through for yourself? Right? Before you can commit to coming through for someone, right? You got to be able to come through for yourself, right? And that's got to be something that, you know, it's a habit that you repeat again and again with your back to the wall, right? So it's like, strip yourself of everything that defines you, all right? And come through for yourself. Give yourself, I like that you have a timeline, because a lot of people don't have the timeline. You said you and your wife came up with 2 years. If you guys can figure it out in 2 years, then you're going to keep at it. If not, then you'll find another way, right? And I think a lot of people don't have that timeline. They don't come through for themselves enough, and they want to be known, and they think that when they're known, that's when it's going to happen. It's like, do you want to be known for what? For coming through for people? How are you going to do that if you're not first coming through for yourself? So the show you're talking about, I think that guy, somebody sent it to me, and then I kind of like watched the preview, and I was like, who is this guy? Like, I never heard of him, right? And it turns out he's like a billionaire.
Yeah, he actually, I believe in the show, he actually did mortgage loans, actually. He started a company for mortgage loans.
Okay.
I forget his name off the top of my head, but no, if I remember correctly, I know he did mortgage loans.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say that too, because like the American dream, okay, so the pandemic, how were you impacted by the pandemic?
I mean, ultimately, it made me transition. You know what? The restaurant was still doing well. Don't get me wrong. You know what? We held on to a lot of employees and everything like that. But it just kind of made me question, you know, with all these people that I was friends with that were getting sick, and a couple of people had passed away, you know, it got you questioning, you know what? This time that we have on this earth is limited.
Yeah.
You know, so listen, you know what? If I can make it in a different business and get to spend some more time with my children, you know what? It's going to be worth it to me.
Yeah. Yep. You have, okay, so there's a certain level of foresight, I guess, that you would have, right? That you don't even know you have. You're like just on as like second nature. It's like your default, right? It's like, I see the shift in the wind. It's like you're sailing. You know how to manipulate that sail. So
no, you don't want me sailing. I get seasick, so I'm not sailing.
All right, bad analogy. What are you doing? You're doing something.
I'll be walking.
Okay, you're walking.
I'll be skiing, actually. How about I'll ski,
Ooh,
okay?
All right, you're skiing. Okay, perfect, right? So you're able to see which way to pivot, right?
Correct.
So that you can not only get more time with your family, but then do something where you can apply your skill set. A lot of people were starting to think the American dream was dead. I was getting that conversation. I was getting a lot of that on my end too, because I was losing business and people were contracting. People didn't feel like, you know, they didn't know how to hold on to their clients, right? And, you know, retention was like, you know, an afterthought. It's like, I got to survive, right? And a lot of people are thinking that way. When you say the American dream is not dead, what is the American dream? What is that? What does that mean to you?
To me, the American dream is just, you know, going out there and working hard for your family. You know what? Having a house, you know, providing for them, you know what? And just being able to spend time with them. You know, again, the American dream was built by people that came over from, you know, other countries, and they founded this country, not necessarily us per se. You know what? And these people broke their back. You know what? They worked. You know, they didn't work 20, 30, 40 hours a week. They were working 40, 50, 60 hours a week.
Right.
You know what? And they didn't complain about it. I feel like, again, maybe I'm getting off topic, but you know what? Everybody just complains about what they don't have versus what they do have.
Yeah.
You know what? Be thankful for what you do have, because there's a lot of people out there, whether it's in this country or another, that unfortunately don't have what we have. You know, you're wearing a nice suit today. You know what? There's a lot of people out there that don't have that.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So,
every day is a blessing, man. I feel you. Like, I'm with you 100%. You know, what's crazy too is like, all right, I think the mortgage industry is the backbone of the economy. I really think so. Because as we were going through the pandemic, you know, and it's selling, even, you know, with real estate in New York, Cuomo like passed a restriction that said, you know, you couldn't make any calls, you couldn't do anything to, you know, engage with people to get new business. So realtors pushed the pause button. But at the same time, you know, those homeowners who are living in multifamilies were liquidating, just like you said, and they were migrating, and they were leaving, you know, the inner city to go out to New Jersey, to Long Island, to go find those single family homes, right? And so the mortgage industry, I was talking to lenders and I started seeing, so 2 industries went up, like heavily went up, 3 actually. So like marketing or digital, anything digital went up, marketing, media, insurance, and lending. All right. So those 3 industries and that's where I decided to zero in on too with my coaching business. And what people were saying to me in the lending space is, I am overwhelmed with applications. I am overwhelmed with, you know, first time home buyers. Then maybe 9 months later, you start to hear that home prices are surging. Right. So okay. For me, I think that's part of the American dream, right? To be able to own a piece of real estate, right? And then be able to leverage that asset to build wealth, right? So how are you able to do that over at Hamilton Homes?
So we actually work with a lot of different programs. One of the programs that we actually work with is called our Heroes program.
Okay.
And that actually, you know, it gives a lender credit of $1,590 to local heroes, you know, firefighters, policemen, teachers, military vets, and nurses. Yeah. So again, you know, you talk about the backbone of this country, and, you know, who's out there, you know, and during the pandemic, who was out there fighting for us, and, you know, was all of these individuals, you know. Mm-hmm. So, you know what, we feel that it's best to try to reward them and go the little extra mile for them to give them a little bit of a break, you know. So we've tried to, you know, implement some different programs for them and, you know, get them in a better situation. Now you say, okay, what's $1,500? Well, you know what, $1,500 is $1,500 you didn't have before. Right. And maybe something that somebody else wasn't willing to give you. Right. You know, so ultimately we feel like those individuals deserve a big shout out. Not to say that everybody else doesn't. Right. But those are the people that we've decided to target at this particular moment. Got it. You know, and just like every business, you know what, maybe in a year from now we'll transition. Maybe hopefully, you know, again, I was in the restaurant business. Maybe we can help restaurant people. There's a lot of people out there that in the restaurant that don't have homes, you know, that they rent, you know, so they're throwing away that money. You know, what can we do to inform them about, you know, how they can take that money and save it, or how they can take that money and have amortization gains as far as putting that money into their house and paying off the principal. You know, and again, that's the educational part where I feel like I can come in and, you know, say, hey, listen, this is what you have to do, type of thing. Yeah. Are you seeing more of a need for that now, especially as we're going through this recovery? I don't feel like there's a need necessarily an extra need to service them. I feel like everybody is always in need of just an educational standpoint, or just, you know, kind of to lend a hand type of thing. So again, you know what, there's always going to be people out there in any situation that need help. It's just a matter of what are we doing to get them the right help. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. What's missing right now? Like what I guess from coming from South Florida to Michigan and maybe even nationwide, what do you think is missing right now that maybe with lending or, you know, with opportunities that are available for people? Because a lot of people are doing refis right now. A lot of people are trying to get to their first time home buyers. They're trying to qualify for a loan. What do you think is missing that maybe we're all overlooking, and there's like a niche in a market that, you know, people can probably gravitate towards? I don't think that we're overlooking it. I think, unfortunately, just inventory is lacking, and that's ultimately due to, just people continuously selling and purchasing, but also the chip shortage that's out there. So you have a lot of builders out there that are trying to, build these homes, but they're getting some sort of completion, but because a lot of the refrigerators nowadays are those touch screens, so they rely upon chips, washers and dryers, everything is Bluetooth, and so those chips are kind of holding us back from completing those homes. Obviously, lumber prices were up for a long time, so that's definitely hurt us, but I think, again, hopefully by the time everybody starts getting back into work, and we can kind of relieve that chip shortage, I think we'll kind of start to see a little bit more inventory. A lot of people are of the mindset, and I know I'm renting at this particular point as well, but you know what? I didn't want to put myself in a situation where I'm in a house that I don't want to be in that particular area, or in a year from now I need to sell and I have to pay my closing costs and everything else. So I decided to rent. But a lot of people are on the mindset of, well, let me just sell and sit on the market for 2, 3, 4 years, and it's gonna dip. I personally, I don't see that happening. Back when that happened, in the recession, 08, people were lending on bad lending terms. They weren't looking at your credit score. They weren't making you put any money down. So just the inventory is the biggest aspect that we need to get back into.
Okay. So like in New York, and then I think across the country too, you start to find out that people are looking for more square footage. They want more backyard space, and especially in New York, right? They want you to have fair housing rights, where there can be like a income portion that's put to the side for people who can't, like affordable housing, pretty much, right? They're trying to find affordable housing. That's the word, right? And I'm wondering like if that's the same happening where in Michigan, or if you've seen that in South Florida, like, because I think what's happening too, the housing prices are being driven up with this exodus to Florida. So like the demand is high. So like you're saying, inventory is low. Is that all across the globe? Is that all across the country? Are you seeing something similar in Michigan, right? Like, what's the difference? So like you're probably nationwide too, right? Like you have probably loan products that are nationwide, right?
So I actually hold license in 2 states. I hold license in Florida and in Michigan.
Okay.
But I mean, what you're talking about, it holds true to all over the states. It doesn't matter whether you're in New Mexico or you're in Rhode Island. We're seeing the appreciation of homes skyrocket that people haven't seen, since that little bubble that we had, back in 06, 07 type of thing. So, but like I said to you before, I don't necessarily see the market taking tanking at this particular point. It is making it a little bit less affordable, but if you have that plan like we've been talking about, and saving money and not just going out to the club and drinking Ciroc all night long,
right.
You know what? Listen, you know what? You'll have that money to put down on your house.
Okay. Who are you working with the most right now? Is it first-time home buyers, refis? Who are you working with the most?
It's kind of been scattered right now. What? The rates are still a little bit low, so I've been doing some refis. I've done a little bit of first-time home buying. I would like to do more of that. Like I said, I want to educate the individual as to what their payments would look like. I've done a couple of retirement homes, so it's kind of scattered all throughout. So I mean, I like it. What? Each day is a new challenge for me. It's not like you go into the office and I have to make a cheese pizza type of thing.
Right.
Okay, what? I'm going to work on a VA loan today. I'm going to work on a first-time home buyer, the next day.
Right.
It's something new every day.
Love it. Okay, yeah, and that part of it, I guess, is exciting too, right? That you always have different
clients all the time.
Yeah, nice.
You got
Okay.
people that have 500 scores. You got people that have 800 scores, and unfortunately, those people that have the lower score, you have to educate them. And hey, listen, we can't get you into a home this second, but you know what? In a year from now, if we do this, we can get you into a nice home.
Nice. All right. Yeah. Okay. So you're holding on to them and you're educating them and you're building them up, right?
Yeah, just put it in your pipeline. Listen, you know what? In a year from now, you know, you're reaching out to them again. You're saying, hey, listen, you know what? How did everything work with what we talked about? You know what? And are we ready? You know what? Can we rerun your credit? Can we see what you've, you know, been doing to get, you know, your score up?
Yeah. Where do you see? Okay. Yeah. Where do you see the industry, say, 10 years from now? Is it going to be virtual, completely digital, or do you think people will still be walking into the office to do business?
I definitely feel that it's going to be, you know, a mix, kind of like we're at right now. You know, there's people that want that communication and that personal interaction. You know, I kind of yearn for that, to be honest with you. I dislike the fact that, you know, I'm talking to you via computer and Zoom.
Right.
You know, I want to be at the office. I want to be shaking your hand.
Right.
But that's me. That might not be the other individual. And I'm okay with that too. Listen, if you're scared, if, you know, if you think that Corona is still around in 10 years from now, which, you know, unfortunately with different variances, who knows what's going to happen.
Right. I was thinking about it too. Like, you know, yeah, I mean, it's like the new flu, right? It's like you got the flu season, you're going to have
crazy.
Corona season, right?
You know, last night I woke up at 1 a.m. and I was like, man, I think I have a sore throat. I've never had COVID, thank God.
Right.
You know, but so I was like, listen, you know, I went on the internet and I Googled what is the symptoms of COVID, and it said, you know, cough, chills, fever, and I'm like, man, that's a cold.
Right. Yeah. So you're gonna have COVID season. I mean,
obviously the side effects are way worse, you know,
right.
than a common cold, but you know, like you don't know who has anything nowadays, unfortunately. You know, so it's a little bit scary, but you know what? Hopefully we can get over it like we got over polio back in the day, and you know what? We can make some headway.
Yeah. I don't know about, there's too many variants to track, you know what I mean? So it's like we got to keep doing what we're doing. And you know, like too, it's like I found you on Instagram, right? And I think there are a lot of relationships that you can find online, and you know, that you can build, create, cultivate. Are you networking? Let's talk about networking a little bit. You said you went to networking this morning, on a networking event. Are you doing more networking virtually, or are you doing some in person?
Man, I've been doing more network than I've ever done before in my life.
Yeah.
You know, again, it's just building those relationships. I'm in a new state, you know, a new city, you know, so you kind of got to get out there. So I did one Zoom networking. I've done a few in person, you know, and again, we're scheduled for a lot more coming up, you know, and again, I believe that in person, you know, just kind of takes precedent over anything else. You know what, they're able to feel your energy a little bit more than just on the via Zoom, which I hope you can feel my energy.
Oh yeah, I can feel your energy from the gate for sure, definitely, since we first started talking, man. Yeah. Okay, so because I'm more like, you know, for me it's either or, right? Like I could talk to you online. I think I'm probably I'm better off in person, because then that way I can read your body language more, right? And then we can probably get up and walk around, right? And I love walking and talking. Like I'm a city guy, I'm a street guy, right? So I love walking and talking, right? But to be sitting in front of a computer, you get the eye to eye contact, but there's a lot that's not being said body wise that you're not picking up on, especially when people are apprehensive and they're hesitant and they don't want to ask a question, they're not sure. When they're probably going through that mortgage application, they're like, well, I don't know, you know what I mean? And they have their little, you know, apprehension or doubts. They have doubts, right? It's hard to read that through a Zoom. So I get what you're saying, right? It depends on the individual though. You know?
Yeah, we've just developed into a society of like texting and social media. You know, like again, I like the interaction with the client. You know, so again, sometimes I'll call a client and then 5 minutes later they won't pick up, but they'll end up texting me.
Yeah,
I wanted to talk to you.
Nice. Okay. Yeah.
You know, so you know what, I've adapted. You know, kind of like what we were talking about. You know what, you pivot. So listen, you know what, I'm not necessarily a texter. I prefer to talk to you on the phone. But if you need to text, I understand you potentially at work, and you know, so I'll text you back, no problem.
Yeah, I'm straight to Zoom too, right? I'm like, let's go from texting to Zoom, because I'm like, I'll just send you a link, right? If you have any questions.
Easy.
Yeah, it's super easy now. Yeah. Okay, let's play a quick game. It's called Hands Down the Lightning Round. I'm gonna ask you 3 questions about 3 topics, okay? And if you don't like the topic, you don't like the question, just say pass. We'll move on to the next one. All right?
Okay.
All right. First question, let's see. Vegetarian or carnivore?
Carnivore all the way.
Carnivore all the way.
I like those fillets.
Okay, yeah. Let's see. Are you more of a cooking at home or a takeout guy?
I like to cook at home. You know, my wife actually does a lot of the cooking, but you know, from time to time, I like to be in the kitchen a little bit. You know, especially that I have a little bit more time. I like to be in there.
Okay. Ocean or swimming pool?
Swimming pool. I hate the salt. That's why I got out of South Florida.
That's the real reason.
Actually, ask me. I'll tell you a lake actually instead, because you know, it's just you get out and you're not covered in salt.
Okay. Nice. All right. Fishing or just boating?
Fishing or anything else? No fishing.
No fishing. Okay. Yeah, because fishing turns out to drinking.
I'm not even a big drinker. I just feel like my day is wasted. You know what? Actually, my brother-in-law is a huge fisherman. He actually does charters.
Yeah.
But I feel like you go out there for 4 or 5 hours, and if you don't catch anything, you wasted the whole day.
Okay. No, yeah.
But he catches a lot of stuff, so I guess it's not a waste for him.
Like catch and release, or he takes it back and cook it?
I mean, obviously, you know, if it's the right size, he'll keep it and he'll cook it. But if it's not, then he has to send it back.
Okay. Okay, and the last one is road trip, or are you flying?
I like the road trip.
Okay.
Right now, it's a little difficult with the kids, but you know, I like to see everything that, you know, all the states have to offer. So I would definitely say road trip.
Yeah. Do you see yourself in an RV doing the road?
No, I'm just not an RV type of person.
No, they're pretty cool. They're pretty cool.
I have a couple of buddies that own them, and you know what, they love them. But I'd rather put myself in a hotel and, you know, drive. Not necessarily the camping type.
I hear you. Yeah, I'm starting to get into them. I think they're pretty cool, the RVs. Yeah. So
invite me out on your RV when you get one.
Yeah, they're like little homes. They're like 250 to like 400, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. They're not bad. I'm not mad at that. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. So, Matt, what is your bottom line, right? Your reoccurring truth, right? That if anything goes wrong, in spite of any setback, you go back to this truth and it serves as rocket fuel to propel you upward. What's your bottom line?
The bottom line, I think, you know, what we've been touching on, you know, all morning is the fact that, you know what, family to me is everything. You know what, if you have them in your corner, you know what, you can get through it all. You know, so ultimately, I feel like it's family. You know, I love my 2 kids, you know, my wife. So that's the rocket fuel for me personally. Nice. Everybody has their own, but that's mine.
Yeah, love that. Family man. That's why we get along, because I'm a family man too. Love it. Okay, where do people find you, Matt?
So I am on Instagram at MattyWill33, and I'm on Facebook at Matthew Wilson, and that's about it. I have a LinkedIn page as well, and that's about it.
Nice. All right. And pretty soon you'll be on YouTube, because we're going to put this up on YouTube, right? Yeah, people can find you there. Follow Matt Wilson, Hamilton Home Loans, right? He's out in Michigan, but he's also licensed in Florida, right? Matt, this was a ton of fun. I love, you know, the conversation that we just had, and I'm looking forward to having more, right? Any last words that you want to leave with the people?
Oh, that's it. Thank you. I appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to doing a loan for everyone.
Yeah, same here, man. Same here. Ladies and gentlemen, this was the Bottom Line Podcast, where we say what we mean, and we mean what we say, because at the core of everything that is, was, and forever will be, there will always be the bottom line.